Hello, my name is Lilian Okibe. Welcome to my channel. So in today's video, we're going to be talking all about volume with locks. Because I feel like I get that question a lot. So many people ask me, how come your hair is so like big and so voluminous and stuff like that, and how can I achieve something like this for my own locks? So we're going to be talking all about that today. That sounds like something that you're interested in, then keep on watching. When it comes to volume with hair in general, whether locks or loose hair, there are three major things that are responsible. Like when you look at a person's hair at any given time, right? There are three things that are responsible for the amount of volume that you can see, right? Now, the first thing that is responsible for that is what I like to call God-given properties, right? This has to do with number of hair follicles that the person has on their head, and like the curl pattern of the person, like how the person's hair naturally coils. Now, everybody is born with a certain number of hair follicles, right? And I feel like that determines the maximum amount of hair that you can possibly have on your head, because hair grows out from hair follicles, right? So if you do not have hair follicles, then obviously you cannot have hair. Many people who think that they don't have the God-given properties for healthy, thick hair, for many of them, they are wrong. Like for most of us, the amount of hair that we can possibly have, dependent on like our God-given properties, is actually a lot of hair. But the reason why for some people it looks like they are not blessed with a lot of hair and things like that is due to bad hair practices that have probably been practiced by our ancestors, our great grandmothers, that passed down those bad hair practices to our grandmothers, and now it has gotten to us. And so you may find that people in your family, or like women in your family, it seems like naturally they don't have a lot of hair. And may just generally conclude that that's because you guys are not blessed with a lot of hair. But from what I've seen, sometimes that may not actually be the case. Like most times, that's not the case. The reason why it looks like you people don't have a lot of hair is because of bad hair practices that have been passed down from generation to generation. I've seen so many people who don't have a lot of hair to begin with. Like it seems like they don't have so much hair. But when you see their hair, they work with what they have in such a way that it looks like they have a lot of hair. I've seen so many people like that. So this like first point of like your God-given properties, this is not actually a big issue for most people that think that, oh, I'm doomed because I'm not blessed with good hair. Most times it actually has nothing to do with genetics per se. It has a lot to do with things that other people are doing that you're not doing, and so now it looks like they are blessed and you're not. Right? But if you're convinced that you are blessed with bad hair, right? You're blessed with no hair, or you're not blessed with hair at all, take it to God in prayer. Pray, and I strongly believe that God can change that. But this is something that you cannot change on your own, and most people do not have this issue. Now let's move on to the next thing that is responsible for the amount of thickness that you have on your hair, and that is how you care for your hair, right? And this is what will determine the health of your hair, and eventually this will determine whether most of the hair that you grow remains on your head and not on the floor and like out off your head, basically, right? This has a lot to do with how you care for your hair, and I feel like this is where so many people get it wrong. And my channel is basically built around this, because like most of my videos are basically me telling you things that you're doing that is damaging your hair or damaging your locks, things that you're doing that is removing hair from your head, from your scalp, or to the floor or to your hands, like just basically taking hair off your head, right? And so you can I'm not going to dwell too much on this because I have so many videos talking about this. Yeah, so you can just go ahead and watch my previous videos. But briefly, I can say that here we are talking about, are you taking good care of your hair? Are you experiencing hair loss? Are you over retwisting or over manipulating your hair such that it's always like breaking up? Or are you uprooting hair strands? Are you popping your locks? Basically hair care things are like hair practices that are damaging to your hair. Basically, if you're doing bad hair practices that are breaking up your hair, uprooting hair strands and things like that, you're not going to be able to achieve the maximum thickness. Like you're not going, like the population of hair that will be on your head will be way less than what you can possibly have, right? If you're not practicing, if you're not following good hair practices. Now let's move on to the juicy part. And I feel like the next point now is where the meat is. Right, this is where the meat is, and this is a part that I have not really shared on my channel, and I feel like it is actually another crucial part that is responsible for like how voluminous or like how thick or like how rich my hair is or like my locks are. And this has to do with whether or not you're making the best of what you already have, whether or not you're, you know, bringing out the best of what you're already working with, or like what you already have, or what you have been blessed with by genetics and things like that, making sure that you're making the best of it. And this has to do with how you're maintaining your hair and how you're styling, like how you're handling your hair and how you're styling your hair. Now, we are going to be talking a lot about, like, there are so many things that are involved in this step, and that's basically what we're going to be talking about in this video. Now, when it comes to locks, in this regard, the first thing you want to bear in mind is how are you starting and how are you retwisting your locks, right? Because if you're trying to get maximum volume, right, from the start of your journey, you want to start with a method that will help give you this quicker and easier, right? So you want to start with a method that gives you loose, kind of like loose, fluffy results, something that is not so tight. So if you're someone who you're trying to get as much volume as possible, you want to be starting with a method that is not box braids, or you want to be starting with a method that is not like interlocks, because it's going to reduce the amount of volume that you're going to have. And no matter whatever method that you choose, whether you start with 2-strand twists or you start with Lilian or Okibe locks, with any other, or with coils or whatever, you want to bear in mind that you're starting with something that will give your hair room to like shrink and swell up, right? I've talked about this a lot on my channel, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. Now the next point that is going to help with volume when it comes to, you know, making the best of what you already have is choosing the number of locks that you start with. Now I talked about this when I was in, like, I think about a year ago or so, where I was telling you how to decide the best lock size. Was it the best lock size or the best number of locks for you, I believe. But basically, if you want more volume, you want to start with a higher number of locks, right? The more locks you have, the higher your chances of creating volume with your locks, right? No matter your hair type. That's something you need to bear in mind. If you want to know more about like what I think about like the size of locks and like your lock number, trying to decide if you've not started your lock journey yet, I'll link that video up in the iCards if you're interested. Yeah, so I've talked about that before on my channel. Let's not dwell too much on that. Let's move on to the next point. Now, the next point is something that I have touched on and I talk on my channel, but you guys don't really understand the gravity of how much this can, you know, catapult your hair, or like catapult your locks from looking like you don't have a lot of hair to looking like you have all this hair. And that's maintaining thickness at your roots. When people hear maintain thickness at your roots, first thing that comes to your mind, okay, don't retwist too tight, don't retwist too often and all that. Yeah, this has a role to play in maintaining like volume and thickness at your root, but it doesn't end there. When I'm talking about like creating volume at your roots, you want to think about like how the state of your mind. Like, if I don't know how many of you guys did wash and goes when you had this natural hair, but the principle is kind of like similar to what you try, like what we used to try to achieve when you do wash and goes, or like braid out or twist out. You know, like when you do like your wash and goes, or you like your braid out or your twist out, if you want bigger hair, if you want more volume, after you have defined your hair, defined your curls and everything like that, you go ahead and like tease the roots just to create that lift at your roots that will help to carry the hair and give you like volume. Something similar that also works when it comes to locks. So you want to maintain that volume and thickness at your roots. Yes, the first step is for you to not retwist too tight and too often. Now, if you even want to take this a step further, and that's why you hardly ever see me with like a tight retwist where you can see all my scalp, and that's because volume is very, 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 very important to me. Like that's like the most important thing to me when it comes to my locks. And so that super sleek tight retwist look has never been my cup of tea, because that reduces volume, right? So if you're trying to achieve volume with your locks, you want to, you know how people say that, oh my goodness, I need a retwist. I already have an afro at my root, so I have to get my hair retwisted now. And they say it kind of like as if it's a bad thing. That's what you're trying to achieve if you want to kind of like improve the volume of your locks. You want that afro at your roots. Now, I know there are many people who are afraid of getting that like afro at their roots because they are afraid that their locks will merge, and don't want their locks to merge, because obviously when your locks start to merge, eventually the volume is going to reduce because you have fewer locks, right? And some people do like separate, they just like pop and separate. Popping is not a good idea. I've talked about that before on my channel, but you can separate gently, right, without popping. Like how I usually maintain, you guys that are not new to my channel, you guys know that I maintain my locks with Lilian and Okibe locks, which is like a mild kind of like twisting technique, whereby even after a fresh retwist, my roots still look like I have an afro down there, but all my locks are separated down to the root. So all my locks are standing on their own, but I still maintain that like thickness and that fullness at the roots. If you guys want to see all about that, I have an online course. I'll link it up down in the description box, rather, in case you're interested. But basically, you want that afro at your roots, because the thing about having afro at your roots is it helps to carry your locks. And so ideally, as your locks get longer, when you first, if you're starting your locks with short hair, at first your locks are going to be standing all over the place and sticking up and spiking up all over the place, right? But as your locks get longer, they're going to start to fall. Now, what you're trying, if you want volume, you were trying to get volume with your locks, you want to make sure that as your locks get longer in such a way that they start to fall, you don't want them to fall flat and fall straight. Because if your hair falls straight and like close to your face, that like it eliminates volume. It's like Caucasians who have super straight hair. Obviously, someone like that is not going to have as much volume as someone with coils, right? So something similar that we're talking about here. So you're trying to get that volume at your roots, such that your locks don't fall like straight. They fall in such a way that they fall. The afro kind of like makes it, the root kind of like stand a little, and then it falls. And so your hair is falling like this, as opposed to falling like this. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's falling like, and that kind of like out and down of all your locks, having a little bit of out before it falls, having a little bit of out before it falls. That helps to like push your hair, like push your locks to be bigger, and that creates that volume. It doesn't matter how many locks you have down here. The more volume you have at your roots, the bigger your hair is going to look, and the more voluminous your locks are going to look. Like, it's actually very simple, but at the same time, many people don't get it. It's that simple. When you have volume at your roots, your hair automatically looks more voluminous. And that's why for people who are semi-freeformers, who go long without a retwist, you notice that when your locks get like frizzy, your roots get thick and everything like that, your hair kind of looks like more voluminous. And when you go ahead and get your fresh retwist where your hair is not hanging flat, it doesn't look as voluminous. Like, it's as simple as that. When you have volume at your roots, it helps with when you have volume at your roots, it helps with volume. And so not retwisting, or like finding a retwisting technique that allows your locks to like hang, you know, to like kind of like go out before it starts to fall, can help. Now, another thing that you can do to help with volume that is also related to this is after you have washed your hair, because for a lot of us, our hair, if you have kinky coily hair, your hair is very easy to get molded, right? And so anything that flattens your hair or like flattens your locks reduces volume. And so you want to try to avoid sleeping on wet locks, because if you're anything that like compresses and flattens your hair, it reduces volume, and you don't want that. Another thing is, after you have washed your hair, you want to go ahead and kind of like, because when you wash your hair and everything, after you have washed your hair, it's normal because of the weight of the water and everything, your locks kind of hang a little flatter than normal, right? So as your locks dry, or like while your locks are wet and everything like that, you want to go ahead and kind of like dig your hand into and kind of like push the hair. I kind of like doing something like this. You're digging your hand into your hair and like kind of like, you know, pushing your hair so that it doesn't like dry flat on your scalp, kind of like pushing your hair away. People who wear wash and goes do this a lot. Like while you're applying products to your hair, you kind of like apply away from the scalp as opposed to applying it downwards like that. This helps with volume. So if you're interested in having volume with your locks, you want to make sure that while after you have washed your hair, as your locks dry, or like while you're applying your products, you want to apply, up here. You want to apply way, kind of like lift, your roots as you apply your products to encourage that volume. And that it seems very, very basic, but this can actually, if you do this consistently, after a while, this can actually transform like how voluminous your locks look. But this is not going to work if your roots are always like super, super flatly retwisted. Because if you like, do this from now to next year. If you don't have kind of like an afro, like a cushion at your roots to like, carry the weight of your locks, if you like, do this from now to next year. And when you're done doing it, to fall flat again. And that's why having that volume, or like kind of like that little afro at your roots, helps a lot. Now, another thing that can help with volume with your locks is for you to lift, kind of like push the weight of your locks towards your head. There are so many ways to do this, but I feel like the fastest way to achieve this, and in such a way that your hair looks a certain way all the time, is for you to have your hair cut in layers. Now, if you look at my hair now, you see that I have this kind of like rounded progression, like, to my hair. I don't know if because of the way I styled today, if it shows, but I have this kind of like, all my locks are not just like one length, right? I have kind of like this layer, right? And that's a really, really nice way to help with volume, because when all your locks are like one length and everything kind of like just hangs flat, I feel like if you have locks and you're trying to have this kind of like voluminous look kind of thing, I highly, highly recommend you that you look out, like you follow people who have curly hair. Like I feel like you can get a lot of tips from women who have curly hair, who wear wash and goes a lot. I feel like that can really give you some insights on how to manage locks to get volume. And if you notice, many people who have curly hair, one of the things that is crucial to a curly girl is having a haircut, right? Because if you have a haircut, your hair looks good all the time because your hair has a shape. Now, if you're trying to get volume with your locks, you want a haircut that shifts the weight up. And this is something I see a lot of people who have locks. Like many people who have locks, their hair is like flat towards their head. There is absolutely no no volume whatsoever towards their head, and then all the volume gathers down the locks. So you have no volume at the hair, at the top of your head, and then all the weight just gathers down, and that just makes the locks look kind of like flat. And you see that if you trace the hair from the scalp, like all the hair from the scalp to the end of the locks, you're going to see that it forms kind of like a triangle. It's going to form, like if you look at my hair now, it kind of like forms, it goes like this. It's kind of like a circular shape, right? But you'll notice that many people who don't have kind of like layers in their hair, all their hair falls down. And the thing about locks is, because locks are basically formed by tangles and shed hairs that accumulate over time. So as your legs get longer and longer and longer, by default, most of the shed hairs will be towards the end of. So you already have that weight down, that artificial weight down that is not common with loose natural hair. But even with loose natural hair, if you notice, if you see people who have absolutely no shape and all their hair is like one length, you see that it kind of like has that triangle because all the weight gathers down here, right? And that kind of like it removes volume from the head. And the thing about hair is that when you look at a person's face and you can see no volume at the top of the head, it doesn't matter how much volume they have down here. When you're looking at the face, like the eyes, and you see like no volume whatsoever around like this part of the hair, it just looks like there's no volume whatsoever with the hair, right? It just looks less voluminous. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to lift volume from down here up here. And one of the nicest and easiest ways to achieve this is having your hair cut in layers. Now, I feel like the easiest way to do this is for you to, if you've not started your locks already, try to get a haircut, like a layered haircut, kind of like a roundish afro, kind of like layered haircut before you start your locks. So that when you start your locks, you already have that kind of thing. And so, like for me now, I did that. And so when I started my locks, so just about like maintaining some like locks that kind of like growing like different from how others are growing, and just kind of like maintaining the shape that I already have. So I have not really done like a major shape for my locks, because I started my locks kind of like a shape. However, I've been practicing with like shaping locks and things like that, but I don't think I'm at that point yet where I'll be comfortable enough to make a video, like a tutorial showing you guys how to cut locks. Just because I don't, even though I've done some of my work, I've seen like it looks really nice, but I don't feel like I'm not comfortable enough to share the video, to share a tutorial with you guys, because I don't want anybody to go and do something and then come back and be like, I destroyed their hair. So when I've perfected the whole concept of like cutting locks into layers, maybe I'll make a video sharing you guys. But basically, you're trying to lift the weights up here. Another thing that can help with this is having bangs. Like now I don't have bangs anymore, like now, but now you can see I styled my hair in such a way that there's a little bit of swoop down here, and this also helps with the volume here. And I also have like weights down here. Now the thing about having like a circular shape when it comes to haircuts with locks is you cannot achieve that circular shape if you don't have like a base of afro to kind of like give you that base that forms that. Like if my hair was like super flat now, even though I have layers, it's not going to look roundish. It's just going to look step. You are going to have one step, another step, and it's going to be flat. It's not going to be roundish. And that's why I talked about that afro at your roots. Like it transforms your locks in ways that I cannot even explain, right? So when you have that afro at your roots, when your hair is cut in layers, it forms that rounded shape that moves the volume towards the top of your head, and that just generally makes your head and your locks look more voluminous. Now, if you're not comfortable cutting your locks, you don't have to. There is another way that you can achieve that like volume, shifting the volume to the top of your head without cutting your locks, and that is by styling your hair in ways that encourage this. Now, a method that you can, one very nice style that achieves this is half up, half down. If you notice that you don't have volume in your locks, right, and you're trying to achieve volume, you want to, whenever you're styling your hair, try to create kind of like a half up, half down, so that there's just something that just adds some weight on the top of your head, no matter whatever style that you're doing. Half up, half down is really nice. I know, I can't remember her name. There's this YouTuber that always likes to style her locks kind of like a half up, half down, and it just instantly makes her locks look more voluminous, even though like when you leave them down, it's not so voluminous, right? Another thing you can do is wearing, like if your roots are super flat and you're trying to like copy that kind of like volume, wearing like a half up, half down can just like add, especially if your locks are not like super long yet, can just add that extra layer of volume up top that will just help your locks look more voluminous. Another thing you can do is wear chunky hats. So even if all your weight is down here, but if you wear like a chunky hat that just gives that volume down here, it kind of like balances the weight down here, and so your hair is going to look like more voluminous. Now, another thing that can help with volume is having bangs. If you have bangs and then you have thick, like if you have volume at your roots, perfect. Like that's just going to give that illusion that you have so much volume. That's all you need to just make that volume, even if your hair is not necessarily in layers yet. Now, another thing that can help with volume is for you to style your locks in such a way that you're not doing like any deep center part, especially if you're like me and you have a big forehead. Like you never want to do like a style where it's like a very deep center part, because that just shifts all the volume from this center of your head, right? I tell you, like you need to have it shifts all the volume away, and then so it just looks like you have no hair, especially if you have a big forehead. Because if you have that deep part like that goes really that far down, when someone looks at your face, they cannot they can't really see any hair up top of your head, and so that just gives that illusion that you don't have so much volume. So try to stay away from deep center part. If you want to wear like a center part, you can do like just a short center part, just a short center part. This should be going back, it should not be like deep. Just make like a short center part and then let the rest of the hair go back. That will give you a better look than just doing like a very deep center part, especially if you have a big forehead. Another thing is, if you want to do like a center, you're trying to get your hair off your face and you want to do like a center part, you can do kind of like a center part with a little hump in the middle. So just pack some of your hair, you know, off your face to the back like this in the middle, and then let the rest fall here. That's like a kind of center part that looks nicer and that helps to create that. But I think I did that style in one of my videos recently. I think like 2 videos away. I did that style. If I can find a picture, I'll put it up on the screen to show you guys like what I mean. And that thing is, if you want to wear your hair down, it's always nicer to go with a side part. That just helps to, when you like for something I have here, like I have on now, I have a little bit of side swept bangs, but even without that, like because my hair is swept to the side, there's a little bit of hump down here at the center, and that just gives that illusion of more volume, right? So those are all the tips I'll be sharing with you guys. I'll be sharing with you guys in this video. I hope you guys learned 1 or 2 things that will help you along in your journey. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if this is your first time on my channel and you'd like to see more videos from me, then definitely subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys in my next video. One thing I've noticed is whenever I wear my locks down now, it's not like I don't intentionally like swoop the back to form a bob, but because I'm moving, I'm talking, this hangs, you know, kind of like normal a little because there's nothing swooshing it, but the back just balls. Let me show you guys. The back just forms a very, I like it because it kind of like gives that kind of like bob shape. You know, it kind of like gives that kind of like bob. Now I just styled my hair so it's not that pronounced, but like let's say I go out and I'm like running errands and stuff, it's going to go like so deep and it's going to form like a complete bob, and I actually like that.